On March 19, 1954, federal agents surrounded a small laboratory in Rangeley, Maine. They seized equipment, burned books, and arrested the sole occupant, a scientist whose crime was building a device that detected what he called deadly orgone radiation. The machine sat on a wooden bench, its metal panels still warm, its dials frozen mid-measurement. What made this device so dangerous that 6 tons of research had to be incinerated? The answer lies not in what it detected, but in what that detection implied about invisible threats the public wasn't meant to understand. This was not an isolated incident. Across decades, inventors developed instruments claiming to reveal hidden dangers: radioactive contamination, harmful frequencies, concealed weapons, biological threats. One by one, these devices vanished from public knowledge. The pattern repeats with disturbing consistency. An inventor demonstrates detection capabilities that challenge official narratives about safety. Authorities dismiss the technology as fraudulent. Within months, prototypes are confiscated and documentation disappears. What remains are court records, obscure patents, and testimony from witnesses who saw these devices work. The first case begins in 1939, when a researcher in New Jersey claimed to have isolated a form of radiation that accumulates in living tissue. Wilhelm Reich was an Austrian psychoanalyst who shifted his focus to biophysics in the late 1930s. He constructed metal-lined boxes he called orgone accumulators, designed to concentrate what he termed orgone energy, a primordial cosmic force he believed permeated all matter. But Reich also developed a detection instrument, the orgone field meter, which he claimed could measure fluctuations in this energy field and identify areas of dangerous, deadly orgone radiation or DOR. Reich published detailed schematics. The device used a modified electroscope with thin metal leaves that responded to charge variations. According to Reich's documentation, the meter registered spikes near nuclear test sites, industrial zones, and areas with high electromagnetic activity. He claimed DOR accumulation caused biological damage: cancer, muscular dystrophy, immune collapse. In 1947, Reich published findings suggesting that atmospheric nuclear tests were creating DOR clouds that drifted across populated areas. He sent reports to the Atomic Energy Commission. They ignored him. Then the Food and Drug Administration intervened. In 1954, they obtained an injunction prohibiting Reich from distributing orgone-related materials across state lines. The injunction was later violated not by Reich himself, but by a laboratory assistant who moved an accumulator between states. Federal agents arrived with a court order. They destroyed everything. 6 tons of Reich's publications were burned in a New York incinerator, federally ordered book burning on American soil. The detection equipment was dismantled and scrapped. Reich died in federal prison in 1957, one day before his parole hearing. Official explanations cited consumer fraud, but Reich never sold the detection meters commercially. He distributed them to researchers for verification. The question remains, if the devices measured nothing, why burn the research? Why imprison the inventor? 2 decades earlier, another physician faced similar suppression for developing a device that claimed to detect disease through radio frequencies. Albert Abrams was a Stanford-trained physician who, in 1910, developed what he called the oscilloclast, an electronic instrument. He claimed could diagnose diseases by detecting the unique electromagnetic frequencies they produced in the body. Patients would provide a blood sample, which Abrams placed on a conductive plate connected to a series of rheostats and resistors. He claimed different resistance settings corresponded to different diseases: tuberculosis at 42 ohms, cancer at 50, syphilis at 55. The American Medical Association labeled it quackery immediately, but Abrams demonstrated the device to independent observers, including physicians and engineers. Several reported consistent readings across multiple samples. Abrams never claimed to understand the mechanism fully. He proposed that disease organisms emit distinct electromagnetic signatures, a concept that predated modern bioelectromagic research by decades. He trained hundreds of practitioners to use the oscilloclast and similar diagnostic devices. In 1923, Scientific American commissioned an investigation. They assembled a committee to test Abrams' methods under controlled conditions. The committee included physicists and medical doctors. Initial tests showed results no better than chance. The magazine published a scathing report, calling the oscilloclast the most colossal fraud in medical history. Abrams died 6 months later. His estate faced lawsuits. Manufacturers of the oscilloclast were prosecuted. Devices were seized and destroyed. But here's the anomaly. Several independent researchers continued to report positive results with similar frequency-based diagnostic equipment for decades afterward. The suppression intensified in the 1930s when another inventor claimed to detect cancerous cells using radio waves transmitted through the air. Ruth Drown was a chiropractor in Los Angeles who developed what she called the radio vision instrument in 1933. The device allegedly could diagnose patients remotely using only a blood sample or a signature as a witness. Drown claimed the instrument detected disease by tuning into the body's electromagnetic field across any distance. But Drown went further. She claimed the device could take photographs of internal organs. She called them radiovision photographs, showing tumors, fractures, and infections without X-rays or physical examination. She produced hundreds of these images developed on standard photographic film. Medical authorities dismissed the photographs as artifacts or deliberate fraud. Yet Drown demonstrated the process to witnesses who reported watching her operate the device. Place unexposed film in a light-tight box, and develop images that appeared to show internal structures. In 1951, the American Medical Association pressured California authorities to investigate. Drown was arrested and charged with medical fraud. Her equipment was seized. During the trial, prosecutors presented the radiovision instrument to expert witnesses, who examined it and concluded it was nothing more than a random number generator with no measurable output. Drown was convicted. She died shortly after, and her remaining devices were destroyed. But several researchers noted a troubling detail. The prosecution never attempted to replicate Drown's photographic process under controlled conditions. They simply dismissed it as impossible. The suppression pattern extends beyond medical diagnostics into detection of environmental hazards. In the 1920s, Thomas Henry Moray developed what he described as a radiant energy detector in Salt Lake City. Moray claimed the device could detect and harness energy from cosmic rays and background radiation. He built a detector that allegedly measured fluctuations in this energy field fluctuations. He believed indicated the presence of radioactive materials or harmful radiation sources. Moray demonstrated the detector to groups of engineers and businessmen. According to witnesses, the device's needle jumped when pointed toward uranium or samples, radium sources, and even certain geographic locations. Moray suggested the detector could identify areas of dangerous natural radiation before humans settled there. He filed for patents. The patent office rejected his applications repeatedly, citing lack of scientific basis. Moray's laboratory was broken into multiple times. Equipment was vandalized. He received threats. In 1941, with the Manhattan Project secretly underway, government agents approached Moray requesting his research. He refused to turn over documentation without compensation and recognition. Shortly after, his funding sources dried up. Investors withdrew. Moray died in 1974. His detection equipment disappeared. His son later claimed that multiple devices were stolen from storage in the 1960s, around the time public concern about nuclear fallout reached its peak. Another inventor faced immediate military intervention when he developed a device claiming to detect concealed weapons at a distance. In 1968, a Scottish engineer named Marmaduke Cowan demonstrated what he called a microwave resonance scanner at a security conference in London. The device allegedly could detect metal objects, including firearms, from up to 30 feet away by measuring disturbances in a low-power microwave field. Cowan showed the scanner to defense contractors and airport security officials. According to conference attendees, the device successfully identified concealed metal objects on volunteer test subjects. Unlike metal detectors, it didn't require subjects to pass through a portal it could scan from a distance. Within weeks, British Ministry of Defense officials visited Cowan's workshop. They classified his research under the Official Secrets Act. Cowan was prohibited from discussing the technology or demonstrating it publicly. The official explanation cited national security concerns. But observers noted the timing. Cowan's scanner threatened to make concealed weapons obsolete, which would undermine both criminal detection strategies and covert operations. A device that revealed hidden threats was itself a threat to those who relied on concealment. No commercial version of Cowan's scanner ever appeared. He signed a non-disclosure agreement and accepted a consulting contract with the ministry. The prototype disappeared into classified research programs. The suppression of detection technology extends into the biological realm, where one inventor claimed to identify viruses invisible to standard microscopes. Royal Raymond Rife was a San Diego inventor who, in the 1930s, developed what he called the universal microscope, an optical instrument he claimed could magnify living specimens up to 60,000 times without killing them. Standard electron microscopes required specimens to be dead and chemically treated. Rife's microscope allegedly used heterodyning light frequencies to illuminate living viruses. Rife claimed he could observe viruses associated with cancer, tuberculosis, and other diseases. More controversially, he built a detection device, a frequency instrument that he said could identify specific pathogens by their resonant frequency. He proposed that every organism vibrates at a unique electromagnetic frequency. In 1934, Rife collaborated with the University of Southern California to conduct clinical trials. According to documentation, terminally ill cancer patients showed dramatic improvement after treatment with Rife's frequency device. The University Medical Committee signed affidavits confirming the results. Then, everything collapsed. The American Medical Association pressured the researchers involved. Funding evaporated. The university distanced itself from the project. Rife's laboratory was vandalized. Photographs of viral specimens were stolen. In 1939, a lawsuit forced Rife into bankruptcy. His microscope and detection equipment were seized. Most were destroyed. A few pieces reportedly ended up in private collections beyond public scrutiny. Official statements claimed Rife's microscope was a hoax, that he saw artifacts rather than viruses. But several independent researchers later reported achieving similar magnification using comparable techniques. Their work was also marginalized. Another detection technology faced suppression when it threatened to reveal electromagnetic pollution from power lines and radio towers. Georges Lakovsky was a Russian engineer working in Paris who, in the 1920s, developed the multiple-wave oscillator. While primarily designed as a therapeutic device, Lakovsky also created a detection instrument he called the radio-soluble oscillator, which he claimed could measure the electromagnetic resonance of living cells and identify harmful frequency exposure. Lakovsky theorized that cells act as electromagnetic resonators, each vibrating at specific frequencies. He claimed his detector could identify when external electromagnetic fields from power lines, radio stations, or industrial equipment interfered with cellular resonance, causing disease. He published his findings in French scientific journals. Some researchers took interest, but electrical utilities and telecommunications companies dismissed his work as pseudoscience. In 1940, with Nazi occupation of France, Lakovsky fled to New York. He continued his research at a private clinic. In 1942, he was struck by a car while crossing the street. He died from his injuries 3 days later. His detection equipment vanished. The clinic was closed. Records were dispersed. No inventory of his instruments was ever published. Lakovsky's detector, which threatened to reveal electromagnetic hazards decades before, public concern about power line safety disappeared from scientific discussion. The suppression pattern intensifies when detection technology threatens powerful industrial interests. In 1958, British physician W.E. Boyd developed a device called the immunometer, which he claimed could detect subtle electromagnetic emissions from blood samples and identify toxic chemical exposure. Boyd was a respected researcher with credentials from the University of Glasgow. His detector allegedly revealed contamination from pesticides, heavy metals, and industrial pollutants at concentrations below standard laboratory detection limits. Boyd demonstrated the immunometer to medical colleagues and environmental researchers. Some reported consistent results, but chemical manufacturers questioned the validity of any detection method that didn't rely on spectroscopy or chromatography. In 1961, Boyd published a paper describing how the immunometer detected pesticide residues in food samples. Agricultural industry groups responded with intense criticism. They funded counter-studies that failed to replicate Boyd's results. Boyd's funding sources withdrew support. His university affiliation became tenuous. He retired early and his research program ended. The immunometer was never commercialized. No follow-up studies validated or refuted his findings. The device that threatened to reveal industrial contamination before environmental regulations existed simply disappeared from scientific literature. One of the most aggressive suppressions involved a device claiming to detect nuclear weapons at a distance. In 1975, a French physicist named Jacques Benveniste developed a detection system he claimed could identify radioactive isotopes through their electromagnetic signature at distances exceeding conventional Geiger counter range. He called it the isotope signature detector. The device allegedly used principles of nuclear magnetic resonance to detect minute variations in magnetic fields caused by radioactive decay. Benveniste demonstrated the detector to colleagues at the French National Institute of Health. According to witnesses, the device registered anomalous readings when pointed toward suspected nuclear materials, storage sites. Word reached intelligence agencies. In 1976, French government officials visited Benveniste's laboratory. They confiscated the prototype for security evaluation. He never saw it again. Benveniste was told that detection of nuclear materials from a distance posed proliferation risks. Through cubes could locate weapons-grade materials, and nations could spy on each other's arsenals. But critics noted an alternative explanation. A working detector would reveal the extent of nuclear weapons deployment in civilian areas, information governments preferred to keep hidden. Benveniste shifted his research to other areas. He became known later for controversial work on water memory. His nuclear detection work was never published. The prototype remained classified. Another detection device faced suppression when it claimed to identify biological weapons agents before symptoms appeared. In 1988, American microbiologist Dr. Virginia Livingston claimed to have developed a rapid detection system for a cancer-associated microbe she called progenitor crypticides. The detector allegedly used fluorescent antibody staining to identify the organism in blood samples within minutes, rather than the days required for culture-based methods. Livingston proposed the detector could serve as an early warning system for biological contamination, not just cancer screening, but detection of weaponized bacteria. She approached military medical research programs with her technology. Initial interest was followed by abrupt withdrawal. Funding applications were denied. Peer-reviewed journals rejected her papers without external review. Livingston continued working independently until her death in 1990. Her detection equipment was donated to a private foundation, which later dissolved. The device's current location is unknown. Critics said Livingston's microbe didn't exist, that her detector responded to contamination or artifacts, but she had successfully cultured the organism and provided samples to researchers who confirmed its presence. Those researchers faced similar marginalization. The final case involves the most recent suppression of a device that claimed to detect harmful frequencies from cell phone towers and Wi-Fi networks. In 2007, German engineer Konstantin Mail demonstrated what he called a scalar wave detector at a technology conference in the device allegedly measured longitudinal electromagnetic wave scalar waves, which Mail claimed were produced by wireless communications infrastructure and could cause biological harm at levels below official safety limits. Mail showed the detector responding to cell phone signals, Wi-Fi routers, and microwave transmitters. The device registered intensity and frequency, displaying results on a digital readout. Telecommunications companies immediately challenged Mail's claims. They argued scalar waves were theoretical constructs with no experimental confirmation. Professional engineering societies called the detector nothing more than an electric field meter with misleading labels. But Mail had documentation. He published measurements showing field patterns that differed from conventional electromagnetic wave models. Independent researchers who built similar detectors reported comparable results. In 2009, European telecommunications regulators pressured conference organizers to bar Mail from future events. Venues canceled his scheduled demonstrations. Online retailers stopped selling his detection equipment. Mail's detector remains available through obscure channels, but mainstream discussion of scalar wave detection ceased. The official position is that harmful frequencies from wireless technology are thoroughly monitored by existing methods. Alternative detection technologies are unnecessary. The pattern emerges with clarity when these 10 cases are examined together. Each device claimed to detect a different hidden danger organ radiation, disease frequencies, remote diagnostics, radiant energy, concealed weapons, biological pathogens, electromagnetic pollution, chemical contamination, nuclear materials, wireless radiation, but the suppression response followed identical steps. First, initial demonstrations generated interest from researchers and professionals. Second, authorities or industry groups declared the technology fraudulent without rigorous replication attempts. Third, funding disappeared, patents were denied, or equipment was confiscated. Fourth, inventors faced prosecution, bankruptcy, or mysterious deaths. Fifth, all documentation and prototypes were destroyed or classified. The official explanation remains consistent. These devices detected nothing because the phenomena they measured don't exist. But this reasoning is circular. If the devices never underwent proper scientific validation, instead, they were immediately suppressed. How can we know what they detected or failed to detect? Consider what unites these threats: radiation, disease, contamination, weapons, pollution. These are dangers the public fears and industries or governments prefer to control information about. A detection device in civilian hands shifts the power dynamic. When Reich claimed to detect deadly orgone from nuclear tests, he threatened the narrative that atmospheric testing was safe. When Drown offered remote diagnosis, she threatened medical gatekeepers. When Murray detected natural radiation, he complicated land development. When Cowan revealed concealed weapons, he undermined security operations. Each suppression protected institutional interests, not necessarily through conspiracy, but through the predictable response of any system threatened by information it cannot control. The human cost is measurable. Reich died in prison. Abrams faced character assassination. Drown was convicted of fraud. Moray saw his life's work destroyed. Cowan signed away his invention. Rife went bankrupt. Lakovsky died under suspicious circumstances. Boyd retired in isolation. Benveniste was classified into silence. Livingston's work vanished. Mail was marginalized. These were not charlatans seeking easy money. They were researchers with professional credentials who built physical devices and demonstrated them to witnesses. Whether their detection methods worked remains unknown because rigorous testing never occurred. Suppression preceded verification. The implications extend to the present. What current detection technologies face similar suppression. Reports surface occasionally of devices that monitor air quality beyond official sensors, detectors that identify harmful chemicals in consumer products, instruments that measure electromagnetic radiation from smart meters. These technologies rarely reach mainstream adoption. Regulatory barriers are cited. Safety standards must be met. Independent testing is required, but the pattern suggests another dynamic. Detection threatens those who prefer certain dangers remain invisible, or whose control depends on information asymmetry. The question is not whether these specific devices worked as claimed. The question is why investigation was prevented. Science advances through replication and refutation. These devices never received either. If the technologies were fraudulent, rigorous testing would have exposed them. If they were genuine, testing would have validated them. Immediate suppression achieved neither outcome. It simply removed the devices from public access and scientific scrutiny. Consider what we don't detect, because certain instruments don't exist. Chemical contamination below regulatory thresholds. Electromagnetic radiation at frequencies not routinely monitored. Radioactive isotopes in unexpected locations, biological agents before they cause symptoms, hidden weapons in crowds. Detection is power. It transforms invisible threats into actionable information. It shifts responsibility to those who create the dangers. This transformation threatens industries built on plausible deniability. The suppressed devices represented early warning systems that might have prevented exposure, illness, or disaster. Their elimination ensured that official detection methods remained, the only authorized sources of information about hidden dangers. The inventors believed they offered protection. Authorities believed they offered disruption. In every case, disruption was eliminated. What would change if these detection technologies had survived? If civilians could measure radiation independently, if patients could diagnose disease without medical intermediaries, if communities could identify contamination without corporate or government validation, the answer threatens established hierarchies of expertise and control, which is precisely why these devices could not be permitted to exist. 10 devices, 10 suppressions, one consistent pattern. The mechanisms varied: legal, prosecution, patent denial, equipment confiscation, character assassination, mysterious death, regulatory obstruction, academic marginalization. But the outcome remained identical. Technologies that detected hidden dangers disappeared from public knowledge. These were not isolated incidents separated by geography and time. They were responses to a consistent threat, civilian access to detection capabilities that revealed inconvenient truths about invisible dangers. The suppression of detection technology continues. Reports emerge, gain brief attention, then vanish. Equipment is developed, demonstrated, then disappears. The pattern persists because the incentives driving suppression remain constant. If these stories intrigue you, consider subscribing to Investigator Squirrel. There are more buried inventions, more silenced voices, and more mysteries waiting to surface. What other technologies have been erased from history? Share your theories in the comments below. Have you encountered detection technologies that suddenly disappeared? Do you know researchers whose work was marginalized? The investigation continues, and every witness matters.